slide. Perfect, and we can start letting people in. Brilliant. Wow, that's fabulous seeing all those people entering the waiting room. So I am a disembodied voice at the moment. I promise you will get to see me shortly. So my name is Amy. I'm from ODI Leeds. I'm joined today by my colleagues Catherine and Grace, who are helping me manage the Members Meetup. So as you can tell, this is just a little bit of kind of an intro and a warm welcome, just as we're waiting for everybody to arrive. We did have up to 75 people registered for this afternoon session, so it'd be amazing if we can get everybody here. So whilst we're waiting for everybody to trickle in, because sometimes I know that Zoom doesn't always play nice with everybody's setup. Like I say, it's just going to be a warm welcome, and then we'll move on to the proper introduction. I will also introduce you to the ODI HQ members of the team who are with us this afternoon. They'll take you through some amazing talks, plus also a bit more information about ODI membership. So we'll usually just give people a couple of minutes to arrive, and then we will get started. Rightio, so it looks like I think we've got everybody we're going to expect for the time being, although like I said, we will admit people even after the talks have started, so because we don't want anybody to miss out, of course not. So bear with me a second whilst I stop sharing this slide. I'll need to turn my video back on. So I would say like magic, but obviously we all know better. It's not magic, it is very scary technology. Welcome to the ODI Members Meetup. So very quickly, just to carry on the warm welcome, as it were, we hosted the previous Members Meetup online via Zoom early this year in June, which was very interesting. So it's the first time we'd done it. I can't remember, I think it was the first time HQ might have done it as well. So it was very exciting. Very much trial by fire, but it all went really well. So, because here we are, we're doing it again. Right, yeah. So prior to that, we had hosted a members meetup in person in March. So it was a shame that it kind of happened just before lockdown. And we don't get to see everybody in person, but this is the best we can do. So hopefully you will enjoy everything. So what I will do now is I will pass over to Julie just to provide a little bit further context about ODI HQ, about the members meetup, and of course about ODI and membership.
Fantastic, thanks Amy. Hi everybody and welcome. It's great to see so many people here. I'm Julie, I'm the membership coordinator at the ODI, and yeah, it's just great to have another meetup. We've got a really interesting bunch of talks and we're continuing to explore the importance of data infrastructure in a crisis. But just before we crack on with that, I'd like to just say thanks to all our speakers for taking part, for their time and contributing, and also thanks to the team at ODI for their expertise in preparing and hosting this meetup, because they always make it look so easy. Also, in case there's anyone here who's not familiar with the ODI, I just wanted to say a few words about who we are and what we do. The Open Data Institute, the ODI, is a not-for-profit organisation and we're based in London, though currently we're sort of all mainly working from home and scattered across the land. The ODI was founded in 2012 by the inventor of the web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, and AI expert Sir Nigel Shadbolt, to show the value of open data. That was about 8 years ago now, and today we work with a network of partnerships that include Arup, Deutsche Bank, Co-op, Refinitiv, Pin St Masons and Microsoft. We're proud of our network of over 2,500 members. That's organisations, individuals and supporters who are all working to get the most out of data. We work with businesses and governments around the world to help build an open, trustworthy data ecosystem. And we do this in lots of ways. Through our research, through policy work, innovation and startup programs, through training and learning. And we've also got a range of practical tools for people to use in their day-to-day work. And that includes our toolkits for both public and private sectors and our data ethics canvas. These tools are open and they're free for everyone to access. Our membership network sits at the heart of what we do. This network is responsible for creating a platform that enables members to learn from one another and to collaborate. Membership can help raise awareness of your work, your products, services, and keep you up to date with all the latest industry news, opportunities, jobs, tenders, plus invites to both our events like this one and our networks events. And it makes it easy to meet and connect. Our members are eligible for discounts on all our training courses and for tickets to our flagship summit. The summit's online this year, like life really, and it takes place on the 10th of November. It's shaping up to be quite a production. It's got over 60 speakers, interactive panels, roundtables, performances, and loads more. It's going to be quite a day. Well, it usually is anyway. So if you're coming along, pop into the membership booth, say hello to me and meet some of the members who'll be joining me there. If you'd like to join us and become a member, it's really easy. Just go to our website. That's theodi.org/service/membership networking. And it'd be great to welcome you on board. So that's my tiny sales pitch. And I'm handing back to Amy to get on with our talks. Thanks, everyone.
Fabulous. I, for one, I'm really looking forward to this. It was a really good event last year. So again, it's a shame that circumstances have kind of forced everything online, but I know it'll be absolutely top quality talks again. So looking forward to it. So before we move on to the speakers, just a tiny little bit of Zoom etiquette, if that's okay. So basically, you'll notice that you've pretty much all been muted upon entry. This is mainly to prevent things like echo, feedback, etc., etc. So if you could stay muted during the talks, that would be absolutely lovely. If you have questions and absolute burning questions that you can't wait until the very end, you can use the chat. So if you use a little chat box, you can pop some questions in there. We will pick them up at the end. But likewise, at the end, there will be time for a Q&A where you can unmute yourself and actually ask the questions in real time. So if you just store up all those questions and wait for the end, we will do our best to make sure everybody gets covered. And I think, there's also the raise hand feature as well. So you can always use that at any time, or you can use that during the Q&A just to alert myself and the members of the ODI Leeds team that you have a question or a comment to add to anything. So very quickly then, so the first three speakers we've got lined up, they were all pre-recorded. So we're going to play them back to back for you. We have Tom Riordan from Leeds City Council, who is going to be talking about that sort of very tricky period where he oversaw the track and trace, the National Track and Trace programme. Followed by Tom Forth, who's going to talk about diversity and data and the development of a diversity dashboard 2.0. Followed by Caroline Gorski, who is leading on the Emergent Alliance, which is a sort of a group of very large organisations covering a lot of private sector, some public sector, covering data science, automotive industry, pretty much like huge organisations that can cover a lot of different aspects of life. They want to try and start exploring what a post-COVID recovery is going to look like. So bear with me a second, I will get those all lined up. So following those, we will have speakers from ODI HQ. We have Fiontann and is it Jay? Yes, Jay Newner, that's it, perfect. So once these three talks have finished off, we'll then introduce the ODI speakers for you. So bear with me a second whilst I queue up the video.
Thanks, Paul. Great to see everybody. Thanks for this opportunity and all the great work that ODI are doing. I don't think data has ever been as important for forming the background to decisions that affect people's lives, particularly during this pandemic. And the work that you've done and you continue to do is absolutely crucial to the city, and I think to a much wider group of people these days. So thanks for that. Thanks also, before Chris speaks, to TPP for the work they've been doing with us and others to help us track the virus and try and get ahead of it. It's been really crucial, and you'll hear more, I'm sure, from Chris about that. In my 10 minutes, I thought I'd talk as much about the national role that I had, because that tends to be the one people are all interested in and pretty obsessed by at times. The work that's going on. It's hard to explain to people just how intense the period of work was when I started in the second week in May to the middle of July, working for the government, as well as being chief executive of Leeds City Council. I do say to people it nearly did me in, and it actually did. I wouldn't recommend having two jobs to anyone. The challenge was enormous in the sense that a test and trace system had been set up at the centre as a result of the what happened during March, where the test and trace capability that we had in the country through Public Health England and the public health teams in local authorities was obviously overwhelmed by the exponential growth in the virus during that period. And I think there's a big debate that people will continue to have about the reasons for that, and why it happened and when we locked down and all of that, which I won't go into for obvious reasons. But what they tried to do after that was to come up with a national system that could have the capability to operate at scale. And that's when the testing capability started to be ramped up, and with that, the tracing capability as well, with a contact centre, national contact centre arrangement, whereby you would basically deal with a rising and significant number of cases, as we're finding at the moment. Again, I won't go into the debate about where testing is and whether it should be further on than it is, and how all that is going. Suffice to say that there is it's an absolutely fundamental building block of keeping on top of any virus. The bit I was brought in to do was to basically create a local element to the system, a bit like the German model, whereby you would have a local foundation of test and trace and contain activity that would keep try to keep on top of the virus at a local level, and that led to what's called the contain framework, and the local activity that's actually kept us, has been pretty successful through the summer, but it has now, obviously, with the second wave with us, we're finding it extremely challenging to stop the spread of the virus as it's happening as we speak. And that, as I said, is to do with having a national testing system and tracing system that works, and having that linked into the local activity. What came out in over the course of that period was that the more local you make something, the more effective it is. And so the capability of the local testing and tracing is close to 100% actually, in terms of tracking people down. It's the more generic and I guess slightly more distant national attempts to track people down that are not quite as effective, and so there's constant work going on to try and bring that together. Just bringing it back to data in the time that I've got, there was a big one of the biggest challenges I had. If you can imagine being in a job where every single thing you did was under a microscope of the national media, and that's because every household in the country is interested in what you're doing, because it affects their daily lives. And so I went from being bothered about what was on page 7 of the Yorkshire Post to being pretty relaxed about being on the front page of the Times or the Telegraph and on the Today programme. And so you just have to recognise that this is a massively challenged environment where data becomes really, really significant in news terms. And so access to data was a massive challenge for me through that period. And I basically worked with the centre and with the Director of Public Health to free up the use of data for a much wider range of people and access to that data from the local public health teams. It's still not quite there. I think there's more that could be done to open it up even further. But we made a lot of progress. And the other thing about the data which was interesting and remains interesting in that is that the main figures that people looked to make decisions about, so the rate per 100,000 that you'll see that at the moment in Leeds today is in the late 80s. It'll probably move into the mid 90s tomorrow. That's one of the key building blocks of the decisions that are taken and what's in the public consciousness about how we deal with the virus. But as important, as you know, as data experts, are the trends. So how much are we accelerating or decelerating? Also, other key data like what's the positivity rate is as important as that absolute data as well. So looking at both of those and cutting through with that more nuanced message has been very difficult for people. And what I advocated from the start was the more open we can make the data, the better, because you've got to be able to almost wake up in a city or a town across the country and see the weather forecast and also see what your COVID rating is. And if you can do that, then you get people on side. If you give them confidence in the data that's available, then that can only help. So it's a work in progress to keep that going. There are many other things I could talk about. We need the strongest possible partnership between national and local organisations and national and local government through this next period. I would like to see us think about, the mental health of people and the economy working well in a COVID-safe environment, rather than the sort of feeling that you're making a difference by forming restrictions that sometimes don't actually work in practice, how people are complying with them. So we've got to think outcome as much as input, and that's where the data element can really help us as well. So the more we can be able to measure how much people are complying, how much people are on side with what we're trying to do, the more we can build that consensus that we get to a point where peer pressure is so much more powerful than a national diktat or a local diktat from the council. If we can create a city peer pressure where people are calling people out actually and conforming to what we're trying to do because they buy into it and they think it's fair and they think it balances the public health element with the economy and the mental health and living your lives element, then that can only be a good thing. So, that's the big thing that I'm trying to achieve at the moment. There's a good chance we'll enter into further restrictions as we go through this week and into next week. But the key for me through the winter is striking that balance between putting the right restrictions in place, being able to enforce them effectively, but getting the public's consent and buy-in to what that means for them. And that does require, I think, through the winter, more of a balance between the health, the people buying into the fact that you don't really need to mix in your own house with other households because that's where the virus transmits, but maybe more buy-in to the fact that we need to allow people to meet up outside because the science shows that's okay. Meet up in retail venues where if you're wearing a mask and you're operating in a COVID-safe environment, that works. And meeting in hospitality venues, pubs, restaurants, theatres, where a very COVID-safe table service, socially distanced, physically distanced environment exists. So that's the next stage. So I'll finish there. I can answer any questions, Paul. I'm sorry I can't cover more than that, but I'm happy to. There's not a lot you can say in the 10 minutes that can do justice to such a massive set of issues, but hopefully that's helped in setting a bit of a context.
No, it's amazing. Thanks very much, Tom. And I think on behalf of us all, thank you for being Tom Two Jobs at the start of the pandemic. There are a couple of questions that are coming through. I think it's the same question. So it's in the chat, but it's the linking to the track and trace app that was launched this morning, and how I guess the way in which people are set, that way in which that data is going to flow from the centre out to local places so that they can use it properly or usefully.
Yeah. So the app, I think, is a massive step forward. So we were in a position where we were going to have an app launch that had real data worries, where it was going to pass into a centralised database that, despite the government saying as much as they could that they weren't going to use it for any other purpose than COVID, people just didn't buy into that. So I think it's the right thing that they've changed tack and gone for this Apple Google based app where you control the data on your own phone. It's anonymous. People don't know who you are at the centre. They don't know where you are at the centre. But if you get a positive, you can order a positive test on the app. You can use it to check in using a QR code, which is really much better than a lot of the arrangements we've got at the moment, more consistent and easier for people. So you won't have to fill in your details every time. You'll just put your phone against the QR code. This is really good news. I'd like to see it used very widely in schools and sixth form colleges and universities, because I think at the moment we're sending 120 kids home for probably a handful of cases. If we had the app, and the phone's being used more widely in sixth form colleges and college settings, then I think we could target it much more. On the point in particular that's been raised and was raised by Newham, I agree with them. At the moment, the data isn't being passed. It would just be held by, the national system, and I think that needs to happen. It needs to be passed locally, and the more we can get local information on the app, and the local restrictions are available on the app, so you can find out what your rating is from just being part of it. That will help. But the more the decision makers locally have access to that data, the better.
Hello, I'm Tom Forth. I'm head of data at ODI Leeds, and I'm going to talk you through our newest product, which is Diversity Explorer 2.0. This is an update to the original Diversity Explorer that we developed as part of the Diversity Hack Day with Yorkshire Water a year or so ago, I think. What this tool does is it takes the data for England and Wales and all of the local authorities within England and Wales and all of the regions within England and Wales, and it takes the census 2011 data, and specifically it takes the ethnic groups by age data, and it does a little bit of work with them to make them useful for today. And then it reports it in an easy-to-use tool which anyone could use to understand the ethnic diversity in their area. I mean, one of the important things that it does is it ages everybody by 9 years. A really important feature of ethnic diversity in England and Wales is that older groups tend to be less ethnically diverse and younger groups tend to be more ethnically diverse. And if we don't age people properly, then our tool will get things quite wrong. So it's important to age people by 9 years. We don't kill anyone who gets very old, and we don't create new people at young ages as well. Or if we do create them, we assume they were the same as people 9 years older than them. So this data is the best we can do for now. It should get better next year and the year after as we get census 2021 data, but for now this is the best we can do, and I think it's pretty good. So it lines up with most of the studies that come out talking about ethnicity. So the key feature of the first version of Diversity Explorer was you selected your place. It could be a local authority like Leeds or Bradford. It could be a region like the northeast of England or something. You select that area, you select an age range. Age range is really important because I've just said that diversity varies quite a lot by age, and it will tell you the percentage of people in that area, in that age range, who are white and who are BAME, so some other ethnic group. So there's a lot of improvements that we've made to that as part of Diversity Explorer 2.0. The first one is that we listened to a lot of people and they said, look, neither white nor BAME is what we are. This is not a useful classification to describe me. And I completely agree with that, because that's not what you asked in the census either. So in the census you have a lot of different groups to pick from. You can even write in your own, I think, if you want. So people pick different groups, but then in my tool in Diversity Explorer, the first version, they were just lumped into two groups. They were either white or BAME. So now we give the option to expand those groups back to what was collected in the original census. So you'll see much narrower groups. So you'll see things like black of Caribbean origin, or you'll see white Irish. So there's both of the big groups that we put together in our original version of the tool can now be spread out quite a lot more. The other big improvement that we've got, and this was just listening to our sponsors, friends, businesses, organisations who deal with us at ODI Leeds, the next improvement that they really wanted was they wanted to say, yes, but what does this mean for my organisation? Is my organisation doing well? Is it doing poorly? Do we need to do better? Do we need to look more at retaining people of certain ethnic groups? Do we need to look more at hiring people of different ethnic groups? or can we check that our current policy, which doesn't aim to discriminate at all, is actually achieving the outcomes that we expect? And that's what the tool does. So it takes the region or the local authority that you select as the user and the age group that you select as the user, and you tell it how big your organization is. So if you say it's 100 people in your organization, what the software does is it hires at random, it runs a simulation, it hires at random 100 people, and it hires them in the proportion of the ethnic groups in that area and in that age range. And it does that by creating a random number and then picking from that random number what ethnic group the person who's being hired is. So this is a completely random process. It does it for all 100 employees in your 100 employee company, but then it repeats that process 1,000 times. So it does it hires everyone in your company all over again, completely randomly, but it does it 1,000 times. And then for each ethnic group in the results, it takes the smallest 2.5% and the biggest 2.5%, and it throws them away. And then it reports the range of people in the most kind of normal results of the simulation. Now, that 5% that we've just thrown away is actually kind of a special number in statistics. We talk about things being statistically significant, and there's no perfect definition of what statistically significant means, but saying it's within the 95% is a pretty widely accepted and a reasonable place to start when we're talking about statistics. So we've written this up. If you want to see it, it's on the ODI Leeds blog. Go to odileeds.org/blog. You'll see there's a big blog post by me called Diversity Explorer 2.0. It links to the tool. You can play around with the tool. That's really the best way to understand what's going on. I think that as an example to think about, we might want to think about the House of Commons. So the House of Commons is 650 MPs. Currently there's about 65 of them who are in a black and minority ethnic group. That's self-reported by them, and we assume that they will have self-reported the same in the census in 2011. So it's about 10%, which feels like it's a fair bit below what is the current expected level, which is 14 to 15%. But the question here is, there's a range of expected number of people in each ethnic group that we would expect. Is that number 65 significantly outside of that range? And that's especially important because we should consider the age of MPs, which I've assumed to be 35 to 70, I think, but different people might assume different ages. And what we find is that it is slightly below what we'd expect by about 3 or 4 people. So the House of Commons has been getting much better in the last decade or two at representing England and Wales. That's something that I would hope that companies around the UK would consider for themselves. Check whether they reasonably well, within statistical significance, represent their communities and the people that they serve. There is a challenge, and it's a challenge that I hope we come to debate in the future, which is if we want to extend the gender pay gap data, which has come out in the recent years, if we want to extend that to ethnicity and start reporting ethnicity pay gap data, I hope that this tool will start people thinking about what statistical uncertainty is and how that can become something that makes reporting such a pay gap difficult if we make groups too small. So what you'll see in the tool is if you really split down the groups that you're considering, and if you have a small company, you can no longer have any guess at what a statistically representative number of employees should be. If the company's small and if the ethnic groups are small, then it will almost always be fine for the groups to have 0 employees in that group. So if we're doing the same when we're talking about ethnicity pay gap, we might find that there's just no statistically valid data to be had if even in quite a big company, if there's only 3 or 4 people in each ethnic group, then we wouldn't be able to report statistically valid salary. So there's a discussion to have about how much we split ethnic groups and how much we join them together for different types of uses and different types of reporting. I think that Diversity Explorer 2.0 helps you do that. As I say, odileads.org/blog, and then just look for Diversity Explorer 2.0, play around with it, read the blog, and I think it's all explained quite well in there.
Hello everybody, I'm Caroline Gorski. I am the Group Director of R² Data Labs, which is Rolls-Royce's data innovation capability. We're a community, a federated community around the world of just approaching 300 individuals, and we work to help support Rolls-Royce and our customers in thinking about data innovation and advanced analytics, including Rolls-Royce's artificial intelligence capabilities. Thank you very much for inviting me to share some of the work we've been doing, looking at collaborative data over the last 6 months, and particularly in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I want to introduce you, if you haven't already come across it, to an initiative called the Emergent Alliance. And I really like the fact that the title of this session this time is Data is Still the Answer to Everything, because I think that very much aligns with our thinking around Emergent Alliance. So hopefully this will be a short introduction to the work that we've been doing, and give you an idea about how our community of Alliance members is working to collaborate around data to address questions of how do we understand the new normal. So just with a little bit of a view on the past, and it seems to me extraordinary how far we've come in the last sort of 6 or 7 months. But the Emergent Alliance was born really out of a response to the initial challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, when you may remember way back in March 2020, the UK government launched the Ventilator Challenge. They asked manufacturers in the UK to come together and collaboratively try to solve the problem about how could we generate enough of a pipeline of ventilator production to actually meet the needs that they were modelling from the pandemic for ventilators in the NHS. And Rolls-Royce was one of the manufacturing organisations that responded and joined that Ventilator Challenge programme. But that triggered my community, those sort of 300 or so data scientists, data engineers, and advanced data analytics analysts. It triggered them to kind of ask the question, well, it's amazing and brilliant that Rolls-Royce's supply chain teams and manufacturing teams and production teams are working on the Ventilator Challenge, but we're a bunch of data scientists. What can we do to help? And one of the things that's very interesting about the work that Rolls-Royce does in data science, which we've been leading on for the last 3 decades, is what we call engine health monitoring. And this is the ability to look at very highly complex fields of data as they emerge in real time, and to spot very faint trends, essentially to do with how we maintain the health of our engines and our products as they're being used by our customers. But my team of data scientists really wanted to ask the question, what can we do from that 3 decades of experience that might be able to look at questions of emerging economic opportunities in the pandemic? Where can we see the beginnings of faint signs of recovery? How can we help to generate confidence in that recovery? What can we do to lessen the scale and impact of the recession that is going to come on the heels of the health crisis that we saw back in March? And it didn't take us very long. In fact, it was about 48 hours between coming up with an idea, what can data scientists do to help? Is there anything we can bring to this from engine health monitoring? Can we do economic health monitoring? To realizing that whilst technically we probably could bring something to that conversation, for it to be effective, we needed to build a community. And so over the next 4 weeks, Emergent, which is what we called it with a little 2 for R² Data Labs, which is the name for the internal Rolls-Royce project, was launched. And eventually on April the 17th, 2020, we brought it out into the public domain as the Emergent Alliance. And over those 4 weeks, we were reaching out to technology companies, data collaboration experts, including the ODI and ODI Leeds, data science teams, data privacy experts, economists, and data owners to join us. We kicked off a range of early stage analytics which have matured over the last 6 months and have resulted in some really interesting work being led by the Rolls-Royce R-Squared Data Labs AI team in Berlin and the IBM Data Elite Squad, looking at how to amplify economic recovery cycles from COVID-19. And we have certainly in the first 4 months and then consistently across the early life of the Alliance been wrangling with lawyers, PR teams and data security teams, and our own remote working challenges and lockdown anxieties, to be perfectly honest, in order to bring this collaboration to bear. And it's really exciting to see where we've got to. The Emergent Alliance is a not-for-profit community, which is here to help inform future decision-making of all sorts, whether that's corporations, small businesses, or even nation states, to think about how can we use data to help lessen the negative impact of the recessionary follow-on from COVID-19. And we draw on a diverse collaboration from 4 continents. We have more than 60 corporations as members of the Alliance and more than 250 individuals working within the Alliance, all on a voluntary basis. We want to bring together and create a safe environment in which all of us in that community can share data, expertise and resources to try to help to aid economic recovery across 2020 and beyond. And we're doing that by trying to bring together a broad set of economic, behavioural and sentiment data that hasn't been considered alongside each other before, fuse it together and then use it to provide practical insights to be able to respond to the global COVID-19 crisis. And the models we build are freely shared. We publish them under Creative Commons on an open source basis, but they're there to help decision makers to identify lead indicators that might be signalling economic recovery cycles, or indeed to inform decisions about choices that have to be made that could have a negative impact on economic recovery cycles. And obviously that's something that's very much forefront in our minds as we're thinking about potential developments of lockdown strategy in resurgence to the second wave that we see right now in the UK. So the key challenges we address cover these 8 areas. As you would expect, our focus is very much on economic recovery. We're interested in how the demand for goods and services is changing, what's happening in our labour market. Are there impacts coming from the way we've changed the way that we work? What happens to globalization and how our local and national economy is changing? But we also look at 3 overarching themes, one around mobility, the movement of people and goods, a second around sustainability, what the impacts might be on environmental sustainability that come out of this crisis. And then thirdly, and probably most importantly, resilience, and how can the world prepare for and develop muscle memory to be able to respond better to the next such crisis that arrives. What can we learn? So how does it work? I don't think this will come as a surprise to this community who must be very used to collaborative data projects, but essentially we share data, preferably data that hasn't been considered alongside each other before, in a trusted environment. So we're very focused on the integrity and trust and provision of safety around that data. We use that data to consider challenge statements. Those are sponsored by key decision makers, whether those are local authorities, central government, large corporates, or indeed smaller businesses. And we publish those challenge statements into our community to have an open and diverse community of individuals working on them. And then we publish our outcomes, our results and our models with meaningful insights and using tools openly through Creative Commons license on the Emergent Alliance website. And if you'd like to see the results of some of our work already published, we've been publishing since the middle of June this year. And that can be found at www.emergentalliance.org. And I suppose really to sum up, the question is being asked of me and the community that we've built. I'm currently the chair of the Emergent Alliance, but our community, as I've said, includes more than 60 corporations who are collaborating with us, and we're delivering our findings in at central, local and national government level, as well as into commercial organisations. But the question really is, what could it be? What have we built and what is its future? So I think the first thing I wanted to share with you in regards to that is, why does it work? And I talked to our board and our executive team inside of Rolls-Royce around this because I think what we are learning as a corporation is about how to do a better job of collaborating across boundaries by our participation in the Emergent Alliance. And I think that's the same for many of the members who are joining with us. Being able to come together to set aside transactional conversations, to actually be involved in a project of work that's far outside our sort of general commercial considerations, gives us the opportunity to learn from each other, to collaborate with each other. And we strongly and firmly hope to develop that muscle memory so that if another such crisis arises in the future, it will be much easier for some of the world's biggest organizations to come together and do better collaboration the next time. And that happens because we have been able to innovate at extraordinary speed, even within the context of this remote working world we find ourselves. And I think in some senses, the crisis itself and the scale and challenge and seriousness of the crisis is helping us to drive forward that innovation, because it's helping us to take risks, to work with boldness, to demonstrate agility that perhaps wouldn't have been run of the mill if we did not have this existential threat around us, making us focus and work harder. And we are looking and driving forward new ways of working, communicating and prioritizing, and pushing volunteering to the max and then some. And we are enormously grateful to all of the volunteers in the Emergent Alliance, whether those are corporate volunteers, seconding in their staff on a free to use basis, or whether those are individual volunteers, members of the general public who have capability and passion and drive and are prepared to share that for free with us. So we're enormously grateful to all of those members of the Alliance who are volunteering their time. And we work with openness, with honesty, with ambition and with passion to try to create something that will make it possible for us to recover together stronger. That independent alliance is incredibly important to us. We want to make sure that we develop this muscle memory, that we have this capability to continue to build a new way for us all to make better decisions for our futures. And that really is what our ambition is, and what we significantly hope we will be able to achieve together. If you have any questions, I'm very happy to take them. If you'd like to follow up, please do feel free to reach out to me over LinkedIn, or indeed to visit us at www.emergentalliance.org. And thank you very much indeed.
Right, there we go. So that's the first three speakers for you all covered. So up next, because I am aware that obviously time is ticking on, next up we have Fiontann from ODI HQ, who's going to be talking about why we should be sharing computer models, followed by Jay, who will share more information about the new peer learning network project in association with Microsoft.
All right. Hello. Now let's see, can I get the right thing I should share? Okay. Yeah, and so that, and then I move everyone up here. So I'm looking at you. Yeah, cool. Okay, yeah. So yeah, hi, I'm Fiontann O'Donnell, senior data technologist at the ODI HQ, and kind of background in, I guess, AI, machine learning, things like that. And in the ODI, kind of researching technologies around data and how to use them better, basically. So without getting too much into like, I don't know, philosophy of science or something like that, what is a computer model? So basically, it's kind of, think of it as like a representation or like a simplification of a part of the real world written as code or software. And so a lot of time in the real world, you can't go out and kind of run an experiment on the world itself. So you create this like model you kind of play around with, you prod it, poke it, put data into it, see what data comes out, what predictions come out. And you hope that this model represents the world well enough that it helps you make decisions about how to act in that part of the real world you're modeling. Yeah, some examples of models kind of in everyday life. And some would be, I guess we're all really aware of all the kind of COVID spread models in the news. yeah, and how these they kind of have quite a massive impact on our lives, and yeah, but also obviously people have been modeling the weather and what's going to happen, or make predictions about what's going to happen. We've done that for decades, if not longer. Is it going to rain on Saturday? Is it going to be sunny on Sunday? People use models for traffic flows in towns and cities to make predictions about how long it will take you to get from A to B. And there's like this model I heard about recently. There's a person in academia I was told about, and they make models, computer models of hinges on doors in ancient Rome. And so just to show that models aren't just used about prediction of the future. It can be about understanding the past as well, and trying to understand what has happened as well also. So yeah, getting to the crux of this, it's like, so why share them? Why if we just make them and they work well, why should we kind of go through the extra effort of getting them out there, sharing them, and making them open? So first big reason is kind of errors, and find errors and improvements in them. So kind of the best disinfectant is light kind of argument. Lots of experts out there, they have opinions, and they'll be able to, the more people that it's exposed to or see it, they'll be able to point out things that are possibly wrong with it, or things that could be improved in your model as well. So, but that particular thing is more about helping it succeed in one particular function. But if you kind of put a model up or share it, then it helps people use it for lots of different things as well. They could use certain parts of it. They could use bits of the code or tools, techniques that you use within it. So someone could use, say you make an image classifier that was recognizing different dog breeds, and then you go, all right, I'll just use this and use it to recognize, say, different cows on a farm, say. Yeah, so there was a big, huge government report on models. It's called the Blackett Review, and if you get really excited about reading 120-page government reports on models, then I know I do, so I really enjoyed it, but it's up there. But it did say that this kind of cross-pollination of ideas is hugely beneficial to building modeling modeling skills across domains within the country. And so next kind of reason as well is to increase trust. And so this is kind of within organizations as well as outside them. So if you kind of have big decisions or recommendations made by models, and that model is just say sitting on one data scientist's laptop just in some department or whatever, and it says, oh yeah, we should really prioritize who to buy inventory off in the next quarter. How is management or anyone supposed to trust what is output by that model if no one can really interpret it, or it's not easy to interpret? And so that's within an organization, but it's also outside it as well. And maybe this kind of gets into people's so they talk about social media and the algorithm or whatever. If the company's open about the models they're using and how they make certain predictions, then it can kind of lead to an increase in trust amongst customers as well of the company. This is more kind of on the government side of things, and it's a continuation sort of the next slide, but specifically about government. And probably, yeah, a big example would be the kind of GCSE exam results thing that was happening recently. And you don't want people, you want the public kind of going, oh yeah, there's these shadowy figures kind of sitting in darkened rooms making decisions with their models or whatever. But if people in government can go, and if it has a big enough impact on people, then it's they go, oh no, look, this is what we have. These are the tools we use to make this decision. And you can show it to the public, show it to media, and say, we have nothing to hide. This is what has led us to this decision. And so probably the people at Imperial had quite a famous or was well reported model they're using to predict COVID, spread of COVID in the UK. And initially it was quite a bit of haphazard code used by academics, but they've actually done amazing work in kind of documenting it, working with people, working with community, developer communities to kind of build that code, make it public, make it open or whatever, and thus kind of increasing the trust people should have in the decisions that come from it. Kind of last reason as well from that is better communication. So if you open up and kind of share a model, then different people can create different explanations for different audiences. So probably the best example is if you are publishing a model and say you work in government, and if someone in the media if you document the model in such a way that journalists can understand it, then they can go on to explain that model to all their audience as well. So it kind of works in a kind of multiplicative way. So, but you imagine this also with inside organizations as well. So we know important technologies have to be explained to multiple people at like multiple levels as well. And so if the model is shared well, documented well, then it kind of makes it easier to create those explanations, and also reduces the chance that the model and its decisions would be reduces the chance that it would be kind of inaccurately talked about or inaccurately reported on or misunderstood. And kind of last part is just a quick roundup of how we believe that people should share models. So it's kind of 4 steps to, I don't know, model sharing greatness or something like that. But it's basically document them, create documentation, thorough documentation that suits people to their needs. So it's like understanding who's going to use this documentation, what do they want to know, such that they will suit their purpose, right? Could be developers, could be people reporting on it. It depends on who you think your target audience is. And publish it. It could be on a website, it could be on GitHub, could be a shared model directory within your organization. It's about putting it out there such that other people can access it. And if you are making it public, license it so that other people can lawfully reuse and adapt the model. And then lastly, tell people about it. Find the people that would be interested in this, find the communities that would be interested in it, link to it, blog about it. That is pretty much all I've got on it. We've written other stuff on this, explainers, various things, and yeah, if you have any questions about this or you want to tell us about work you're doing in this area, then yeah, just get in touch with me. So I am FOD@theodi.org.
Wonderful. I think I'm up next.
Yeah, have you got everything ready, Jay?
I do.
Oh, fabulous.
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Nooner. I'm a consultant with the Open Data Institute. In this talk, I'll be sharing more about our work with Microsoft on a new peer learning network for data collaborations. I'll provide an overview of the opportunity and information on how to apply. This opportunity is part of a multi-year partnership with Microsoft launched in early 2020 with the objective of advancing the cause of trustworthy data sharing and collaboration. The Open Data Institute, as a nonprofit focused on furthering research and solutions for open data ecosystems, brings to this partnership a wealth of technical knowledge and frameworks to guide open data efforts. Microsoft, a longtime leader in technology solutions, has developed its own set of open data principles and is developing initiatives that support those principles over the next few years. Together, the ODI and Microsoft aim to address the data divide and help organizations of all sizes to realize the benefits of data and the new technologies it powers. Within the partnership, we're conducting multiple work programs, one of which is a peer learning network. We'll bring together up to 5 data collaborations in this first cohort of the peer learning network to foster sharing of knowledge and creation of new knowledge among the network participants. The ODI's work on peer networks aims to develop leadership and knowledge sharing in support of publishing and sharing data principles by bringing together peers in similar situations to learn together. For example, in a previously run network connecting open data leaders from governments worldwide. The ODI believes that peer learning is critical to the development of sustainable behavior change within organizations around the use of data. For this peer learning network, we're seeking data collaborations that involve a collaboration of companies, nonprofits, research institutions, and/or government entities that address a specific challenge, whether societal or business related, that are working to make data as open as possible in the context of their collaboration, and that ultimately demonstrate increased access to or meaningful use of data in reaching a specific goal. In particular, we're aiming to explore with our network participants issues of trust and trustworthiness. The ODI's work has found that being trusted is relational and involves an assessment by another party. An organization might deem themselves trustworthy, but they can only consider themselves trusted once another organization has placed its trust in them in some way, for instance, performing a service or delivering a product. Collaborations can also assess, build, and demonstrate their trustworthiness by using tools and mechanisms like contracts, audits, codes of ethics, and certifications. Within the peer learning network, we will explore these issues as they occur both within the collaborations and amongst the collaborations and other stakeholders. Within the peer learning network, we will be providing funding and expertise for an initial cohort of up to 5 data collaborations. Applicants should expect to dedicate time for 3 to 5 half-day workshops and regular monthly check-in meetings over the funding period for this first cohort from December 2020 through May 2021. Participants will have the opportunity to receive up to £20,000 for their time over the period of the peer learning network to learn about and receive guidance on various technical approaches, governance mechanisms, and other means for managing data collaborations in different trust contexts, and to connect with peer groups also working on these challenges. These activities will be facilitated through the previously mentioned workshops, access to Microsoft and ODI experience, introductions to relevant people, organization, and groups in the ODI's and Microsoft's networks, and other means as described on the Open Call webpage at the odi.org/opencall. And specific payment terms are also available on that webpage. The main deliverable for each participant in the peer learning network is a short report describing their data collaboration and outlining their experiences in the network to be delivered and published at the end of the funding period. We also expect regular engagement from the participants and additional contributions to other outputs developed by the ODI and Microsoft as outlined here. And you can find a full description of these things on the Open Call webpage. Now for how to apply. In brief, all applications will be assessed as described in the ODI's public procurement policy. In addition, for this procurement, successful applications must meet the following criteria: alignment with the goals of the network, with the premise of making data as open as possible within the context of their collaboration, and with the ODI's mission, a clear and well-articulated proposal indicating what the data collaboration is about and how it would fit into the peer learning network, a clearly articulated intended outcome from the data collaboration's engagement with the network, evidence of collaboration such as letters of support, and demonstrated commitment to publishing outputs and working openly. We also encourage applications from diverse businesses as set out in Microsoft's supplier diversity policy, as well as collaborations committed to addressing challenges faced by disadvantaged or underrepresented groups through their data collaboration. You can find the full criteria at the Open Call link. Here you can find the timeline for the application and selection process. Notably, applications are due by November 17th, 2020 at 11:59 Pacific time. Again, all of this information and further details and guidance can be found at theodi.org/opencall. If you have any questions about the peer learning network, you can email us at procurement@theodi.org, and we ask that you quote the reference MS01. And for more information, we invite you to join a live briefing webinar with more detail on the opportunity and the application process. That will take place on Thursday, October 29th, 2020 at 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. To register your interest and receive the link to the webinar, please visit bit.ly/peer learning webinar. Thanks for your time. Hopefully I can stop sharing.
Right, fabulous. So that is everybody covered. I will start this now by saying apologies for slightly dramatic lighting. I am sat in a sunspot at the minute, so if all of a sudden half of my face starts to look like Phantom of the Opera, I do apologise. It means we've got very bright sunshine coming in through the windows. Right here, so I am delighted to say that we have got Tom Forth available for questions. So he's actually preempted us a little bit and he was answering questions before they were asked during his own presentation. So that's fab. So if anybody's got any additional questions for Tom, he is available live with us for questions. We also have Caroline Gorski available for questions as well. And of course, we've got the ODI HQ team. We've got Fiontann and Jay. So I have my trusty chat box open, ready to spot any questions in there. I've already seen that a conversation has started between Robert and Fiontann about sharing computer models. So if you don't particularly want to use your microphone or camera, that's absolutely fine. Just start typing your questions in the chat box. But in the meantime, I'm just scanning for any hands up if anybody's got any questions, or feel free to shout out. So if, let's have a look. So Robert's comment, it might have actually been answered by Fiontann, but by all means, if you would like to elaborate on this in conversation, that'd be absolutely wonderful. So Robert's comment was, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on ways of tracking, indexing, and sharing the adaptations that people make of open models. So kind of like a family tree of all the models that are descended from an original one, but that others can search for the most relevant variant for their needs.
Yeah, I guess I was given an attempt. That's one of those ones where, yeah, I guess someone speaking, it's like, oh, I'm not entirely sure, so I'll just kind of try and answer and see what happens. But it, like I was just saying, like if you take models, there's kind of like they're usually dependent on some form of input data or input variables. They make predictions, output data, whatever. There's software code, but there's also crucially documentation as well. Like if you imagine all four of those things, like so you imagine there's kind of in software, they've long had the thing called like version control, where you can see descendants of software, you can see how it's changed and all the changes that have gone along with it. But how do you do that? So you can imagine for the software part of the model, but then things like documentation, is there good version ways of doing version control for data? Probably. I'm not entirely. Yeah, I'm not off the top of my head. I'm not too sure. Maybe other people do know about good things or things to track changes in data sets. Off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, if anyone else has any thoughts on that, I'm happy to learn, put it that way.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge, but there are some tools out there that you can use. And I guess the thing that we probably really need now, and it's especially come to light, is that we need some kind of integrated way of bringing this together, like where the data's changed, where someone's changed the code or whatever, or the way that it's presented, you know, just like the visualizations or whatever. And so that someone coming new to the subject can find the adaptation that really works for them. And then they pick that one. So they don't have to reinvent the wheel from the original model every time. So yeah, I don't know. I agree, it's an open question, but it would be quite a cool tool to have for open data people.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a bit more like you don't maybe have to worry too much about descendants and having a properly structured family tree and stuff like that. It's like just good documentation of the model itself, machine readable as well, and such a way that it can be searched as well over. Like search, imagine in your organization you have 15 models of things and just be able to search over all them. So you like take the way like Google dataset search kind of came up in the last 2 years. And that was because of people adding certain machine readable like metadata onto data sets, such as you can search over millions of them in one go. But nothing, as far as I understand, nothing really exists for that, or any standards exist around that, around models and modeling and being able to search them properly. Yeah, as far as I know, there is work done again with Google, but also other people on things called model cards, which is, if you just search model cards Google, then you'll find it. But it's kind of presenting the right metadata or just information about the model. Who wrote it? How do I contact them? What does this do? Like, yeah, what versions are there? Where did you get the data for this? Kind of stuff like that. Even just basic documentation for models, that's still kind of in its infancy, really. Or yeah, more work needs to be done on that. And maybe that seems more the problem than kind of worrying about proper version control and structured trees and things like that. That's my hunch, but if any other thoughts, then happy to hear.
So Tom Forth has actually just put a comment in the chat talking about open models, and he's mentioned Open Fisca. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing that properly at all. And he said basically it models the French legal code plus several other countries as well, focusing especially on tax and benefit system, but it's been forked nearly 100 times. So you can see who is updating it, fixing it, etc. So it's hosted on GitHub. So I mean, I think Tom will be able to explain it a lot better than I can.
Yeah, I mean, for our participants in Nigeria, I think I saw earlier, there's a version for both Senegal and Mali on there. And anyone who is, I don't even know what time it would be, 5 in the morning, welcome New Zealand. There's a version for New Zealand as well. So lots of different countries have copied this, and it's quite nice because it lets you model instantly. Like if you put if you put VAT up by 2%, what type of families and what levels of income are affected by that. It lets you just see it straight away, and it's all open and modeled. So it's worth checking that out if anyone fancies it.
Yeah, we've had someone comment pretty much straight away saying amazing open model. Fabulous. Do we have any more questions from our audience? I've scanned through the chat box and I can't see anything outstanding at the moment. So Mary Susan Barry, apologies. Should there be an expectation from governments that all algorithms, models and other information be available?
Yeah, so we're hoping to talk about this at the summit as well. And I was talking to really smart and just really nice guy, works at the Software Sustainability Institute, Neil Hong Chui, and he was saying that like you can't, there is a certain overhead with opening things up. It takes a bit of extra work. You have to document it. You have to do whatever. And like, what if I create a model to like a toy model to know whether we should buy, I don't know, you're in the Whitehall canteen, you need to know whether to buy PG Tips or Tetley's or something like that. Does that need to be documented? Does that need to be opened? Does that need to, probably not. Like, so it's just like at a certain level of impact of a model, then it needs to be opened. If it's deemed important enough that it should be made public, then maybe it should go through not just open, but like what level, how should it be explained, how should it be documented, should be documented and explained at multiple levels. And so what is the sufficient level of documentation for a model, and what is kind of a sufficiently impactful model used by governments? That's kind of open questions as well. Don't really know. So like Imperial, as I said, did amazing work kind of opening, documenting, cleaning up the COVID epidemiology model they had. But I think it'd be interesting to know why they did that, or like what were the best practices, or why they saw themselves as needing to do all the different ways they did do it. Obviously theirs is probably the most impactful model in possibly the history of the British state. I don't know, but but it's a good question of which ones need to be opened and how they should be opened. It's kind of a bit of research hopefully we get to do in the future, but don't exactly know the answer yet.
And we have another question. So this is from Jaya. Is there anything modelling regulations?
Modelling regulations. I don't get the question. Company regulations and impact on business. Modelling regulations, for example. Is it modeling certain aspects of the law, or I'm just a bit vague on what the question means exactly. Sorry about
that. Jaya, if you want to, you can unmute if you want to actually start a conversation.
Yeah, hello. So I just loving the fact that there was this model that had looked at legal code and tax and benefits, and of course there are regulations that come out, policies from government on various things that also have massive impact, not just increasing, decreasing tax. So it's just if there's any knowledge of those sorts of things, well, that's the realm in which we operate in terms of looking at compliance and the impact of that on corporate behavior and consequently what's happening to the environment.
All right, okay. Yeah, okay, sorry, now I get it. It's like if we implement policy X, what will happen to society, that type of thing. I think they are slowly moving into it. I guess what's a bit scary is when you get into things like public policy, the number of unknowns kind of explode really. Like it's one thing predicting, whether it's a chicken or a dog in an image. Like, it's a whole other thing. Like, should we, yeah, what impact will school dinners do on how that'll affect society or something like that? I'm kind of, the interesting thing is, like, how would you even know you have sufficient data to even answer that question? You can attempt it, but maybe a kind of blind adherence or kind of blind belief that models are going to predict the future is maybe a bit overconfident, really. And I think it seems to be that maybe certain people in government that advise certain top people kind of believe in this, and there's lots of kind of maybe a lot of hoopla and kind of talk about a digital twin of the whole country, and such that we can make policy decisions. Yeah, to kind of strike maybe the ODI line, and that I guess all of that starts on good, well-structured, open data, such that we can make informed judgments. And whether you want to create some massive model for this, sure, it's definitely, like, it's worth a shot if it'll help inform decisions you make, basically. And what's efficient for that, making good, like, what's a sufficient model for making good policy judgments? Yeah, I think that's open to, for such a hard thing as like society and people. Just tread lightly is probably the best approach with skepticism.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, for us, we're flipping it and trying to say, well, what data infrastructure do we need in order to create those models that would inform policy, so that we have an evidence-based approach to policy rather than something that seems to be hit and miss, and a lot of countries are getting it wrong. Yeah,
it's exactly on the data infrastructure stuff. It's like, I worked in the BBC, and it was kind of like, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to get all this machine learning stuff, and we're going to have this amazing recommendation. But they spent, like, it took a couple of years even before they could just get everything in the one place, such that they could start even developing even the most basic recommendation things or prediction things or whatever. So yeah, and often it is the foundations more so than what fancy model or algorithm you can use on top of it.
Thank you.
Right, fabulous. So Tom Forth has added some more sort of examples of that open system, the open FISCA system. So it is quite possible. I mean, Tom might be able to confirm that you.
I'll just jump in, Amy, and say a quick shout out to the team at UK Parliament. So there's Parliamentary Digital Services, and they work really, really hard. They have done for years to try and even understand how the House of Commons works and try and write it down in a way that makes it clear that, like, starting from some MP's speech, 3 years later, there was a law that was passed that had this change on how big the windows needed to be on a flat in Mansfield. And it's really amazing work, but basically their answer is it's too hard still. So if it's too hard for them after about 3 years, I think understanding how laws interact with the real world is really, really difficult. I'll try and find a link to that, actually.
Cool. Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in that. Thank you.
Right then, fab. So from the looks of things, there are no additional questions or comments in the chat box. If anybody has got any questions, now's your time to raise your hand or let us know that you'd like to ask them. I mean, in the meantime, whilst I'm just waiting for people to just tentatively type anything out, I will just very briefly mention that this sort of like concept of wanting to look at the impact of like regulations and things like that on wider and broader things is that something that was brought up at an event we held earlier today, actually. So looking at the broader impact of the new tier restrictions and how they impact businesses, economy, schools and education, and so on and so forth, rather than just looking at something incredibly niche, such as restaurants versus pubs versus bars. So it is something that is very much on the tip of everybody's minds, I think. Oh, a question for Caroline. So what sort of timescale of recovery are the Emergent Alliance looking at?
Hi guys, can you hear me? Brilliant. So essentially, we're looking for early stage indicators that can be amplified in the first instance. So we're trying to find, and by the way, as a corollary, we're also looking for early indicators of potential negative impacts. And clearly we need to understand both, because being able to give early indications of where actions are having an unforeseen detrimental effect is also really, really important for our work. But in terms of how long the Emergent Alliance is configured to exist, we made an agreement as the collaboration, as the group of volunteers, that we would remain in operation for as long as the UK is in recession related to COVID-19. So I guess when we first got together, we were very hopeful that that might only be 12 to 18 months. At this stage, given that we've already been through 6 or 7 months, I think we're assuming that it'll certainly be the longer of those guesses, and possibly rather more so even than that, which is not good news for us all. But I think we're seeing that some of the work that we're doing, and by the way, all of our models are published openly, and those files are on both our website and GitHub. I think we're beginning to see that the work has real potential in sharing some of the modelling and some of the way that we're bringing data together, which hopefully will help people to take action, to actually make to use that as an input along with lots of other things into their action choices, whether those are policy actions from a local and national government perspective, or whether they are corporate or smaller business actions from an operational perspective.
Thank you very much. And my apologies, that question was from Andrew. So thank you for asking that, Andrew. Right then, so if the speakers haven't got any questions for each other about anything, I will keep my BDI on the chat just for any final last minute questions. But what we'll do there is we will start to wrap everything up. So thank you very much to all of our speakers today. So obviously we had a nice mix of sort of people delivering their talks live, a couple of people pre-recorded, but also it was brilliant that Caroline and Tom could join us for the Q&A at the end. So thank you very much for being available today. And thank you very much for the ODI HQ team and everything like that they've done and kind of supported with the Members Meetup. We will post the ODI membership slide again at the end, just for anybody who's interested. And of course, there's been some really, really good work mentioned today. So a lot of that can be found on the ODI HQ website. So I know that the Fiontann's work on computer models is all there available to read. And of course, there was the open call for the peer networking with Microsoft. So that's all available on their website, dead easy to find. And of course, if you're interested in some of the things that we do at ODI Leeds, just pop along to odileeds.org and we've got everything pretty much fairly accessible, all on our front page, all on our web page. So the Members Meetup will be available to view afterwards as a video on YouTube. So either if you've missed something and you want to go back, or if you'd like to share this with anybody or with any colleagues, everything will be available afterwards. If you registered via Eventbrite, we will send that out as like an email after the fact, just listing any useful resources, and that includes links to like the Emergent Alliance, for instance, the diversity data work that Tom Forth has done, and of course links to specific things for ODI HQ as well. So with that, I think we shall wrap up. The sun's starting to set and I've still got to cycle home, and I am praying it doesn't rain. So thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon, and I sincerely hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Bye.